Dear students and my teacher friends, Namaskar. I welcome you to the presentation lecture on vomiting. Now, the other name for the vomiting is also known as emesis. Now, in our life, why we suffer sometime from vomiting? What is the reason? What are the causes? What is the definition of vomiting? So, sometimes what happens, the food which is present in the upper GI tract, let's say the food which is present in the stomach and the food which is present in the duodenum, this food explode out from the mouth in a fraction of second of time. So food is coming out from the stomach and the duodenum very quickly through the mouth, and that process is known as vomiting. Now we know the food in the stomach, the bolus of food reach into the stomach, and after the digestion, that digested food is known as chyme, and the chyme enters into the duodenum and the digestion in small intestine starts inside the duodenum with the help of bile and the pancreatic juice and intestinal juice. All this thing we know it, but this is the normal digestion. But in case of vomiting, what is happening? What is the mechanism? What is the process? Why this is occurring? Vomiting. So sometimes the stomach gets irritation. Now this irritation can be caused to the stomach. Let's say the person has eaten the roadside food or the stale food, so that time the stomach can irritate it. Or distension means enlargement or the swallowing, so stomach becomes large sometimes. Let's say the person has attended the one party or the marriage ceremony, and he has eaten so many type of varieties in that party. So what happened, the stomach is distended of that person, and when the person reaches to home, he vomits. So this is the meaning of distension of the stomach. Then there are some other stimuli or the causes of the vomiting, that the unpleasant sight. Let's say we come across the garbage, person sees the garbage, or the sometimes in our life we have to visit the public toilet. So in the public toilet, person goes and he starts vomiting. Okay, then person sees the medical waste. Okay, so these are the few example of unpleasant sight. So person start vomiting. Then the at the time of medical surgery, local anesthesia is given. So the drug which is administered, the drug which is given to the person, let's say it is not suitable for the patient's body, so patient starts vomiting. Or in the condition of dizziness means person is not aware where he is sitting, what is the time, and person thinks everything is roaming around, everything is moving around. So that condition of that person is known as dizziness. So in the dizziness condition also, person experience the vomiting. Then person is taking some drugs. Let's say a person is taking morphine or the derivatives of the digitalis, so that time also person can experience this vomiting. Now, so with this we have completed the first point and the second point. In the first point, this is the definition of vomiting, and in the second point, the stimuli or the causes of vomiting. Now moving on the third point, the control of vomiting mechanism. Okay. Now in our brain there is a control center for this vomiting process. For example, here in the figure, 1 minute, in this figure, the brain is shown, and this one, this blue color, this is the vomiting center. Okay, so this vomiting center, which is present in medulla oblongata, this vomiting center is controlling the vomiting process. Now if you observe that from many places, various parts of the body, the nerve impulse, they are reaching to this vomiting center, and the vomiting center analyze all this incoming information. Then after analyzing, the vomiting center send the messages. So here with the green arrow, the nerves are coming out, and the nerve, they are propelling the nerve impulse. So for that I'm showing you one figure. For example, the third point, see, this is the third point for you. Now the nerve impulse, as I told you earlier, that the nerve impulse, they are transmitted to the vomiting center. So vomiting center is receiving the information from various parts of the body, then it is analyzing the information, what is happening, and vomiting center is located in the medulla oblongata. Then this vomiting center sends the nerve impulses, and this nerve impulse, they reach to the upper GI tract organ. Let's say the nerve impulse via the nerve, they reach to the stomach and the duodenum, and also the nerve impulse also reach to the diaphragm, and nerve impulse also reach to the abdominal muscle. So here in this figure, here you can see the stomach. This one is the stomach, and in the stomach, mechanoreceptor and the chemoreceptor are stimulated, are excited. Now what this mechanoreceptor and the chemoreceptors are, when they are stimulated, so this receptor can be stimulated. Let's say a person has eaten too much, so due to the distension or the enlargement of the wall, the pressurized wall, so this pressure, this food is putting the pressure on the wall of stomach, so the mechanoreceptor are excited. Or if person has eaten some unhealthy food, or the roadside food, or the stale food, so at that time the chemoreceptors are excited. Now this mechanoreceptor and the chemoreceptor, which are present in the stomach and duodenum, they are sending the nerve impulse to the vomiting center. So with the blue arrow, you see the nerve is passing the information to the vomiting center. Then from the vomiting center, nerves is coming out, and the nerve impulse now reaches to the, so here in vomiting center, the information from the mechanoreceptor and the chemoreceptor, that information is analyzed over here, and vomiting center sends the signal, sends the nerve impulse to the spinal cord. Then from the vomiting center there arise the vagus nerve. So this one is the vagus nerve, and as you can see, the vagus nerve is reaching to the stomach. So if you observe closely, this is the vagus nerve, okay, and that is attaching to the stomach. Then from the spinal cord, spinal nerve coming out, and spinal nerve sending the nerve impulse to the respiratory and abdominal muscles. Okay, now what happens? So one more chart I would like to show you. For example, here this is the vomiting center. Vomiting center receives nerve impulse from GI receptor, chemoreceptor, mechanical receptor, then the chemo receptor and vestibular center. So from all this point, from all these places, the vomiting center is receiving the information and vomiting center is analyzing the information. Now vomiting center is sending the nerve impulse to the phrenic nerve, to the vagus nerve, and to the spinal nerves. And phrenic nerve send the nerve impulse to diaphragm. Vagus nerve send the information, send the nerve impulse to the esophagus, stomach and duodenum, and the spinal nerve send the information to abdominal, rectus, intercostal muscle. Now if you know this muscle, that where in our body this muscle is present, so now you know in the youngsters there is a craze to develop the six pack abs. Okay, so the six pack ab muscle is known as the abdominal rectus muscle. So the spinal nerve sends the nerve impulse to abdominal rectus muscle. So once again you go through this information, from where the vomiting center is receiving the nerve impulse and where the vomiting center is sending the nerve impulse. Okay, so all these organ, diaphragm, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, abdominal rectus, intercostal muscle, they have received the nerve impulse from the vomiting center. Now what happens? So here one more figure I am showing you. 1 minute. Here you see. Okay, so this one is the diaphragm they are showing. This one is the diaphragm. Okay, this is the diaphragm, and here you see direction of muscular contraction. So this is the normal condition. Okay, and the diaphragm is shown over here, and at the time of vomiting what happens? See, the abdominal muscle are contracted. Okay, and this diaphragm is also contracting. So the contraction of diaphragm and the contraction of abdominal muscle, they are squeezing, they are pressurizing the stomach. Okay, so when the stomach is squeezed, when the stomach is pressurized, the undigested food which the stomach has received, that is exploded outside. So the food is expelled out from the body through the mouth. Now here Here, when the food is exploded out, what happens? We know at this juncture where the esophagus opens into the stomach, there is a sphincter is present. Okay, and during the time of vomiting, this sphincter is relaxed. This sphincter open up, so the immediately the food contain of the stomach comes out in the esophagus. It travels from the esophagus, then it enters into the pharynx, then in the mouth, and the food is exploded outside. Okay, the food is thrown outside the body through the mouth. So this arrow is for the flow of gastric content, the food of stomach, and this arrow is showing the direction of muscular contraction. Okay, so now moving on the fourth point of our discussion. This is the fourth point. So what actually happens in vomiting? So we have discussed that the diaphragm and the abdominal muscle, they squeeze the stomach, and the esophageal sphincter, it opens out and food is expelled out from the mouth. This is the vomiting process. Now, if vomiting is occurring very frequently, prolonged vomiting, especially in infant, small babies, or the aged person, elder person, this vomiting can cause the serious problems to the infant or the elder people. The reason is because so much acidic gastric juice is lost. And now we know in the gastric juice that is HCl is present. So this HCl or the gastric juice is lost from the body. So what happened? The HCl is also responsible for maintaining the normal pH, the normal blood pH. But as the gastric juice is lost in the vomiting process, the blood pH goes up, the blood pH increases. Then due to the vomiting, person suffers from dehydration, water is lost from the body, and damage to the esophagus and teeth. Vomiting also affect the esophagus and the teeth. So with this, we have completed the discussion of vomiting process. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation lecture, and I also hope that this presentation lecture will be helpful in your exam preparation and also in your studies. My name is Manish Koshti sir. I am from Ahmedabad, India. Bye bye. Namaste.